Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sincerely Agile with Mary. Now, from the beautiful garden of England, Kent, it's another episode from your host, Mary Lanion. Now, today I have Adi with me, and we are going to be talking about women in board roles. Um, I'm just going to welcome Adi to the screen. Hello,
Hello, Mary.
how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
You don't sound too fine.
Yeah, I took a
Tell me,
booster.
what's up? What's up?
I
You
took
don't
a
sound too
booster
fine.
injection yesterday,
Oh
and I
my
met my
God.
my temperature was a little bit high. So
Just
yeah,
yesterday you took a booster.
I just took it yesterday.
Oh
So
dear.
I thought I was, scot free, gonna be scot free because I didn't feel anything for a day. But now I'm kind of feeling it.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll make sure this isn't too long. Okay? I'll
Thank you
make sure
so
it's not too
much.
long. It's good to have you. I mean, you were just talking about, having your booster, and we have another strain of COVID.
Hmm.
It's really tiring now, isn't it?
Yes, a micron. So yeah, we thought we were, you know, fine with just two injections, and now we're finding we need a third and possibly a fourth, and potentially there is uncertainty about the future because this is uncharted territory. So who knows,
It is.
how many more we have to take.
Yeah, and doesn't it just remind you of the Kinefin framework? when
Complexity, chaos.
when chaos, absolute chaos. Now,
Yeah.
when will this be a complicated problem? Who
Uh,
knows?
God knows, you know,
Who
but
knows?
potentially when we have more herd immunity, as they say. But
I
yeah,
know, I
uh,
know, I know. Anyhow, Adi, it is a pleasure to have you on Sincerely Agile with Mary. Now, on this show, this is where we endeavor to make, as you know, change agents of ourselves, learn, unlearn, and relearn. And I'm hoping that we can be awesome and wholesome here together this evening. And I hope I can raise your energy level because I know you're not in the best of conditions today. But thank you still for making the
it's a
time
pleasure. It's a
and
pleasure.
making the commitment to be here. Now, I can see we have some of our audience joining us. We have someone joining us from Facebook. Victoria is here. That's my daughter. She's at university, but she always tries to join.
Hello,
And
Victoria.
yeah, and that's Ronke as always. Now, today, Adi, we are talking about women in board roles. And this is quite, a topical, you know, conversation because it's been too long now.
Mhm.
But just before we get to that, let me just, introduce you to our audience properly. So, Adi is a non executive director who sits on the board of the Government Internal Audit Agency, the MS Society, and Parkinson's Africa. With over 2 decades' experience in strategy, operational, and project management roles, she has a track record of successful leadership engagement. In her current role as an enterprise coach, she supports leaders and organizations to adopt strategies to thrive in their given business context. Her earlier career includes being a director of quality at Addaction and head of governance within the NHS, leading successful healthcare commission reviews. She describes herself as a soccer mom and is currently pursuing a doctorate in business administration at the University of Central Lancashire. Now, that is an impressive one.
Thank
And
you.
you call yourself a soccer mom. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, that's because I have two sons who are sportsmen and play for some well-known clubs. They play, football, and much of their young growing up. My husband and I would have to drive them to soccer, so hence I've adopted the name Soccer Mum. It's become my persona. Football is the rage in terms of what we discuss in the household. So yeah.
Wow. Wow. And being a soccer mom, I can't even begin to imagine the level of commitment, the effort that you have put into that constant training for them, which I mean, how early in the mornings do you have to take them sometimes for training? At the weekends, perhaps?
The
A lot of
weekends, yeah,
commitments. Yeah.
Sundays,
Yeah.
you give that up. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. But from what you've just said, I think they're doing all right. So it has paid off. So
Yeah,
well done to you and
thank
well
you.
done to them. When we talk about young men going into football or music, we often feel it's an overnight success. It is
Mm,
not.
no.
A lot of hard work goes in behind the scenes. And it's not just about being passionate about something,
Hmm.
it is also about having the discipline
Discipline,
to be
totally.
consistent, yes, at
Mm,
it. So
mm.
well done to you, and well done to your sons. Well done to the entire family, and well done to their dad as well.
Oh yeah,
Everyone
that
seems to have played their part. So well
dad,
done
yeah,
to you.
dad definitely played, very key role.
Fantastic,
Yeah.
fantastic, fantastic. That is great. Now, more people joining. Yep, we've got more people joining. Thank you for being here, everyone. Let us know where you're calling from. Now let's get down to it because Adi, honestly, I don't want to keep you here too long today just because of how you're feeling. Um, However, let's start with this. Now, stories can break the dignity of a people, but stories can also repair the dignity of a people. Now, that's
Mm,
a quote from Chimamanda. And this is just to emphasize the importance of stories, right? And you sit on three boards. Three boards. I mean, we're talking about women getting into boardrooms, and I have one right here in front of me who sits on three boards, right? Now, talking about stories, tell us, how did that journey start for you, and how
mm.
on earth did you end up in three boardrooms? That must be
Right.
an interesting story to hear.
Yeah. In terms of the stories that we tell ourselves, one of the things that captivated me about that quote is because I felt that, being a minoritized woman who has, been in a number of senior roles, is now a non-executive director on, several boards. Um, you know, Women of color have to
Hmm.
contend with a perception, and that perception is, the perception of the angry black woman, and it's not a victimless crime. From my experience, when I was heading up governance within the NHS, I had to sit on a number of disciplinary panels, and I noticed that people of color and women of color were disproportionately, the subject of those disciplinary panels. And I think that's an important thing to land because, aside from the cultural biases and that people experience, the portrayal of the media of, the angry black woman, even women like Michelle Obama haven't escaped that. The likes of Serena Williams didn't manage to, and even Oprah Winfrey, the richest black woman in the world. And I think it's really important that women understand this, women of color understand that bias is there, and
Right.
that they take steps to empower them. So that's what I mean by the stories we tell can either
Yeah.
include people or exclude. But the good news is that the case for racial diversity and gender diversity has never been clearer.
Hmm.
You have the likes of McKinsey. They did a study, not a couple of years ago, with a 250,000 of women, and found that, and also with
Hmm.
organizations that have, gender diversity are more likely to outperform organizations that don't. But that, the probability of outperformance is even more when there's racial diversity.
Diversity.
Yeah. And when you think that black women sit on the intersection of that, women of color and, you know, so it's gender and race. So I think women of color need to understand that we have a right to sit at the table. In fact, we
Hmm.
can do businesses good. That's not to say that just because you're a woman of color, you should be on a board. But, the research is showing that racial diversity and gender diversity is associated with better outcomes. And we know that the world is now just one global community. And it's really hard to develop solutions that will fit the global community if you don't have that diversity. So these are some of the stories I'd like to see more of. I want
Hmm.
women to tell themselves, to remind themselves of this. Yes, you may not be
Yeah.
seeing as many women on the board. You may not be seeing many women of color on
Hmm.
the board, but you need to keep in your mind that you are valuable,
Absolutely.
and that your diversity and your gender can be really helpful to organizations.
And yeah, can add value. I mean, I like what you said about diversity being something organizations should leverage for success.
Yeah.
I mean, I was moderating a conversation earlier on, a few months ago actually, for the Agile Alliance conference, and we were talking about diversity in software development. And it was funny, that software organizations, they are trying to create solutions for the world, but you don't think you need diversity to enrich your research and the kind of products and solutions you're trying to actually deliver to a global audience. So there's just so much to gain from having diversity in all its forms. And
Yeah.
with the conversation going on, and with a lot of awareness in this space, hopefully things get better, but we'll see, because I have
We will see.
I have a report that makes you cringe if you actually believe that. So talking about diversity and inclusion, somehow we've already talked about it in that first opening. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is a topical issue, but are we just paying lip service to this subject? Are we just paying lip service to it? Because I mean, a lot can still happen in that space. Women are still being, marginalized, if you
Hmm.
like, in
Yes.
leadership roles, in board roles, in politics, name it. So is this just lip service, or has it become, more of a strategic intent within organizations?
Yeah, I think this is, yeah, it is a very important observation, because, we're more or less led to believe that we live in a meritocratic society, that if you try hard enough, there are opportunities out there. You only need to try hard, and there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't succeed. But the harsh reality is that certain demographics don't have, get a crack at those same opportunities. And for those that do find themselves in senior roles, they invariably come against up against a glass ceiling, or they find themselves being treated differently. So now we have clearly, businesses, know that what the stats is telling them about diversity being key. They even say this in their strategies. We know that the legal context, demands that that we have a moral obligation to fulfill. But the landscape, particularly the levels of diversity, that we're seeing, where minoritized groups are asking to stand up and being counted. There isn't any one person who can claim, even if you are intersectional in terms of, minoritization like me, I may not have the full gamut of
Hmm.
experience for other issues that other minorities face. So I think organizations are struggling,
Hmm.
because they don't know what good looks like, and because they're having to grapple and don't know the lexicon, the language to
Hmm.
use to make people feel included, and stuff like that. So I think that, yes, there's something about a bit of paying lip service. I think the Black Lives Matters was a bit of a wake up call to many organizations who realized, that where they thought that, racism was on the decline, and that people were being treated equitably. I think the shock that this definitely was not the case. And, many organizations are looking at how they, looking at various parts of the talent process. So whether that be recruitment, whether that be, the opportunities they are giving, their leaders, whether that be the mobility
Hmm.
of minoritized groups and stuff like that. But my observation is that the data on intersectional, if you like, groups is not as strong as it could be. And
Right.
to really to begin to win in this, complex problem, you need the data, you need the insight. If you aren't collecting data on the levels of, minoritized groups accessing, certain roles or being recruited in or on the board, or in terms of accessing learning opportunities, if you aren't collecting that and you don't know, for instance, that the rung is broken for a certain set of minoritized groups, you really, you're not even near first base
Hmm.
in terms of trying to handle that issue. And I think
Right.
that has been the wake up call. Again, I do like, McKinsey a lot. They did a really huge study and showed that, minoritized women, in fact, women in general are more likely to experience microaggressions
Mm-hmm.
at work, but women of color experience it more.
More, much more.
So, there's a whole host of things that play into it. It's not just,
Mm.
there's institutionalized marginalization, the history of an organization. It's grown up with certain mores, certain values. And yeah, some of these things are baked in. So, but you're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with people who have upbringings which may have shaped the way they see people of other minoritized groups. And so it's a
Absolutely.
complex issue. And you mentioned something about Kinefin. And the
Yeah.
thing with when you're dealing with complexity, you need to take that incremental,
Yeah.
iterative approach because it's uncharted territory.
It
Let's
is.
not kid ourselves.
Yeah.
You have to facilitate the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
understand what's going on, what's the pain points, how are people feeling, really, be happy to have those challenging conversations
Conversations.
because that's the only way you'll
Mm.
be able to get to the nitty gritty of it. But the other thing I would say is that, I mean, I've had this conversation on one of the boards that I sit on, in fact, on a couple of them, and I've said you need to problematize the
Hmm.
issue that you're finding. You can't, I mean, no organization has got the wherewithal to eliminate racial bias or what have you. But if you understand that this is causing a particular problem and you define that problem, you can more easily find some solutions that you can test out and see how it lands. And
What you're essentially saying is they really need to, define it,
mhm,
and understand very intentionally the problem they're dealing with. I mean,
exactly.
you were talking about Kinefin just now again, and I was also just thinking about wicked problem. This is a wicked problem, a very, very wicked problem, and we need to approach it iteratively, and just make that leap forward one baby step at a time.
At a
But we
time.
need to be very intentional about it, because on the one hand, you also talked about data. And yes,
Mm,
all these consulting firms, McKinsey in particular, they are very good at that, and they will support their reports with data. But on the one hand, you could have the data to show me, to
mhm,
say, you know what, I've got 30% or 40% diversity, whatever the
mm,
case may
mhm.
be. But what about inclusion?
Totally. So
What about
diversity
inclusion?
without inclusion is is almost irrelevant because
Absolutely.
if you have people well represented but the culture isn't
Hmm.
inclusive,
Yeah,
there's microaggressions, they
exactly.
can't say when they're unhappy about something, there's a racial bias,
Hmm.
how they are performance managed,
Hmm.
their access to opportunities, then those people aren't going to stay.
Yeah,
And it defeats the objective. So I feel that for some of us, we've heard of EDI, qualities, diversity and
yeah,
inclusion. You
yeah,
need all. You need that
you
pay
do.
parity. There's something about having pay disparity
Yeah,
that communicates to people that they aren't important to you.
exactly.
And there's something about being included in key decisions, and
Hmm.
and being treated like any other person. And
Absolutely.
yeah, but then there's more. Women have different needs to male employees, and it's also recognizing, there's a bit around wanting to be treated the same,
Hmm.
but there is something around, women would be denied access unless you understand that there are other issues. They, for instance,
Absolutely.
90% of women do, regardless of how heavy duty their job is, they do a disproportionate amount of household chores. So,
Yeah.
so flexible working
Mm-hmm.
modalities are really key if you want
Mm-hmm.
to retain women, as well as, for groups that have been marginalized, understanding what sort of support that they
Mm.
need, to
Absolutely.
access those heavy duty opportunities. Maybe they need extra coaching, maybe they need mentoring, maybe they need, a sponsor who can
Mm.
really help to, increase their visibility within the
Absolutely.
organization. So they
Within the
develop that
organization.
portfolio of
Mm-hmm.
skill sets that people can attest to, and that gives them that credibility
And that
to,
can propel them
and
forward.
that can propel them
Absolutely.
forward. Yeah.
Fantastic. We've got some ladies here joining us. Hello, Dike, saying hello from Chesterfield. We've got Edna joining from Milton Keynes. Nice to have you here. We've got Buki. Nice to have you here. Buki's got a question. What advice would you give to a Black African woman who's just started university? That's a good one.
Right. Well, I think university, my view is that university education is quite, I mean, if you're talking in terms of the topic, it's a personal decision. But in terms of, you know, thinking about where you want to be, I think that is a pivotal time, because it's great. You're never too young to start thinking, what kind of leader do you want to lead? What kind of arena do you want to be in? What course do you need to study? Are there people who have a track record within that field who can be a mentor, who can, help you access, maybe give you some in between, come help and help them work, in a voluntary capacity. I think all of these things help you, in the, graduate milk round when, there is that competition for some of the top roles.
Mhm.
If you want to be in investment banking, you need to find a sponsor, somebody in that
In
arena
that
who
sector.
can even let you know that those roles are even in existence. What you don't want to do is, put so much effort into education
Mhm.
only to be struggling for jobs and watching others who know people,
Mm.
you know, get
And that's
into
a
those
very
roles.
good question. And I like the way you responded to that because it's not enough to just go through the university. We need to start thinking about mentoring. We need to start thinking about volunteering. We need to start thinking about, the power of networking.
Yeah,
Okay. I mean, growing up in my era, these were not things that happened so easily. I mean, even the word coaching and mentoring was not in our vocabulary, for crying out loud. So today the opportunities are there. A lot of even mainstream like meetups groups that you can be a part of,
hmm,
get to join the conversations and become much more enlightened. I mean, that's a very good question. And yes, I hope you got the answer you wanted from our guest. Ronke, they need to be intentional. Absolutely, they need to be
totally.
intentional. Inclusion and solidarity. Hello, Nana. Nice to have you here. Okay, so let's see what other question Eddie can answer for us. Now, you said something earlier on. You said a lot of organizations perhaps don't even know how to go about this wicked problem.
Mm,
So they perhaps don't even know what success should look like.
mm,
So, what might success or what should success look like in this space when we
yeah.
talk about, diversity, inclusion, gender parity, women in, in these amazing leadership and board roles? What might success look like in this space?
Yeah. For me, it starts with the data, and
Okay.
it starts with organizations paying, not paying just lip service to, we are committed. See what the data is telling you. Um, Look at those intersectional minoritized groups as well, because though you may be improving the number of, people of color,
Mm-hmm.
how many of them are men, how many of them are women? And
Mm,
if you aren't collecting the data on the different intersections of LGBTQIA, for instance, other minoritized groups, or
right.
beliefs, then
Mm,
you're not really going to know how well you're doing. The data is going to tell you, but then you
right.
don't just stop at the data. You
Mm-hmm.
have action plans to tackle, the most key and the most impactful issues. I think that's really important. I mean, what surprises me in organizations is that many of the data that they have on equal EDI is not as strong as it could be. And
Right.
and that is an issue. Uh,
That's already a problem, because if you're
it's a
trying to
problem.
solve a problem and you don't have the right data, how can you ever solve it?
Exactly. The other thing is that, I recall seeing somewhere that only 35% of organizations link, you know, leaders and managers, sort of performance or rewards to them achieving substantial progress, within the EDI agenda. And I think that needs to change.
Right.
I also see that organizations come up with EDI strategies that they don't resource as well as they do
As
their
well as
other
yes.
pet projects. And if you're
Mm,
going to, it's not a cost neutral activity. If you're going to look for, pay parity, is going to cost you. If you're going to empower a minoritized and marginalized group who can't even see themselves in those roles, then you need to pay for that learning development. And it's not just the bog standard MBA, because that doesn't prep you to be a leader of color. It will provide you with the management, the HR, the strategy, but it's not really going to help you necessarily with those behavioral stuff that, people who are from different groups in terms of how they want to show up, how they want to be treated, and how to handle some of those wicked problems
yeah.
that is not allowing them the mobility. So
Mm,
you need, so if you want to address the issue with women mobility to senior leadership roles, then you need to provide them with that support, because far
absolutely.
too often women cite things like you know the issue of the imposter syndrome as being one of those things. So women tend to be more perfectionists, whereas men can have much more confidence, even when they tick less of the boxes for the job description than a woman. A woman feels she has to be 90 something percent before she can
Absolutely.
apply for that job. So you're
Mm-hmm.
already not starting on
Mm,
the same playing field. So women need to have their own, I believe, leadership development program. I also believe women of color dealing with the angry black woman thing and just being careful to negotiate the politics and the culture kind of need programs that will tackle it on
mm,
head on and bring to bear some of what there's research, lots of research into
okay.
this, and we can learn how to
Mm,
position ourselves so that we don't step inadvertently into minefields, because yeah, the higher up you go, the more political it is, and
absolutely.
you need that political acumen, whether
Mm,
as a woman or a woman of color, to navigate some of those political minefields, so to speak.
interesting. Interesting response right there. And I hear you say how people are, what's the word I'm looking for now? Performance,
Yeah,
the
manage.
whole performance process, how that is managed. They need to be intentional about how they are performing, with regards to DE and I. That's one.
Yes.
Secondly, if you talk about having this strategy and that strategy to deal with, diversity and inclusion, is it well resourced?
Hmm.
If it is not well resourced, then you're not going to have that the result that you hope for. Now, you talk about women development program. I'm
Hmm.
all for that. But just like we go into organizations and we have leaders in leadership roles, we also have informal leaders, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
The same goes for the old boys network.
Hmm.
Now, do we have the old women's network?
Not, I don't imagine it's as fully formed, and and I'm not sure why, to be honest. Whether it's because we are, dragged down by the chores in our daily
you
domestic
know I,
life.
I just had to bring that up, because when you were talking about women development program, we are doing a lot of that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the old boys network,
Hmm.
the old boys club, they sort themselves out there.
Hmm. Hmm.
They do a lot, and we don't have this old girls club where we can informally really pull each other along. That is perhaps a conversation for another day. But I
Definitely.
like the way you actually did tackle that.
I
Now,
totally. Yeah.
I asked what might success look like in this space,
Mm,
especially because of my next question.
mm,
Now, the 2020 Mind the Gap reports that
mm,
none of us will see gender parity in our
mm.
lifetime,
Yeah.
and it is unlikely that many of our children will either. Now, this is a sobering thought. And
Mhm,
when we talk about our lifetime and our children's lifetime, we're talking about 100 years from now.
mm, mhm. Yeah,
Your
this
thoughts?
this is a funny one because
Yeah.
I mean this is the World Economic Forum,
Forum.
and
Yeah.
I made reference to that in my
Yeah.
blog on the Government Internal Audit Agency sort of website. And yeah, it is quite sobering because even the World Economic Forum recognizes that women are very important, assets to, to drive,
Mm-hmm.
the thriving of organizations.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we come up against a perception that there isn't a problem, right? Because I've lost count of the numbers of men, even my own sons, who say, "Mum, you know." They're really concerned when women raise this as an issue. They feel it's problematic. Nobody likes to feel like they aren't, you know, um, that they aren't perfect, or hitting all those milestones. And so it's really hard to explain that this is an issue. It's not through a lack of ambition, and that there are, blockages. It's sobering because women are just as ambitious, but the ladder rung is broken for them. And
Mm.
this is even more apparent in organizations that have a sort of masculine energy to their culture, where the leadership, the qualities that are seen as leadership, tend to be those that they recognize more in men.
Yeah.
And so women are dealing with that. So, with the men being the gatekeepers to those roles, when they're talking leadership, that they recognize certain attributes which commonly are so associated with
With
men.
men.
But I really like the New Zealand Prime Minister, because she's always been told she isn't aggressive enough, she isn't this, and she challenges that, and she says, there is space for that guy. Oh, did she take her baby to the UN sort of conference and was feeding her baby? So yeah, she's really changing the
Yeah.
perceptions of what leadership is, and she has consistently delivered on things like COVID.
She
When
did.
there was that Christchurch shootout, she showed her mettle. So I think what there needs to be an understanding that leadership comes in different shapes and forms, and women shouldn't be ashamed of the relational,
Mm-hmm.
sort of capabilities that they have. I'm not saying women can be analytical. I mean, I see myself as analytical, and those are
Absolutely.
some of the attributes that I bring to my board roles. But women do tend to, and this is scientific, it's not me
Mm-hmm.
generalizing, that women tend to outperform in terms of social skills. So we should play to those skills. We shouldn't allow anyone to shame us that we aren't, following the typical male
Male
um, gender
attributes. Yeah.
attributes. But then, having said that, women, can be aggressive too. So we shouldn't be pigeonholed into,
Mm-hmm.
this is not a behavior that a woman, and I see women of color sometimes being pitched as aggressive and being penalized for demonstrating qualities that white males have. And I think there needs to be some more education of
Mm-hmm.
leaders in this space to be able to learn how to include and not be intimidated, not be afraid, of just you're saying, I don't know it all, teach me.
Yeah.
We're not expecting them, and nobody is expecting. I would be in difficult waters if people from other minoritized groups expected me to be an expert in their own story. And I
Exactly.
think we need humility
Mm-hmm.
to, to accomplish this. I think also the role model effect. One of the things I said in my blog on the GIA website was that one of the things that I struggled with was not seeing other women of color in those roles. But then, and but at the time I was on that journey, I felt I had to do it alone. I didn't know that I could reach out to mentors, I could reach out to coaches, I could reach out to coaches who know how to coach women leaders,
Mm.
and I was going through this imposter syndrome
Syndrome.
really bad, and it really affected me. But now what I've realized is that women need to build networks, and it's not only
That is
with
it.
other women, it's with creating allies,
That
from
is it.
whether they're white males, black males. I know for me, becoming a non-executive director, I remember working on a piece of work with an amazing man of color, and I checked up his LinkedIn profile and found out that he's a Ned on several boards. And I quickly got time with him in the diary
That's
and said,
good.
look, this is what I want to do. And he was just
Exactly.
sending me, access is a problem, but also being able to thrive in it. You need that support system around people who've done it before and
Yeah.
can really tell you, how to show up. Um,
People who've done it before. And that was exactly what I did. I reached out to you. You remember?
yeah.
Earlier on this year, I reached out to you because this is what we're supposed to be doing. And now we're talking about what women or women networks
Mm,
should be doing to propel themselves for more access, to the boardroom. I mean,
yeah.
you've talked about how you reached out to someone on LinkedIn. No, someone you knew, and then you checked
Mm,
out his profile on
mm,
LinkedIn. I mean, it
mm,
doesn't just have to be a woman reaching out to a woman,
mm.
but what can we do as women to really get this going? If a non-executive director role is something that appeals to us. I mean, you've touched on it a little bit. I don't know, should we form an old girls network? Is that one of the strategies
No,
we need to form?
well,
You've talked about allies. Let's hear more.
yeah. So, it's good to form. There are so many groups out there for women who are, need support, a support system, for their leadership role. I think women, should do their best to access that. But it's also about, finding, sponsors within the business arena who can
Mm,
just provide those access to projects. I think one of the things that women struggle with, and this again is based on research, is being able to blow their own trumpet, right? And the imposter syndrome makes them feel they aren't, you shouldn't even try to go for those roles. And I would say run towards it, even if you are scared. And I
yeah.
was about, you and I, we're free with each other. Even if you're scared,
Mm,
um, do it afraid,
yeah.
um, and build that support. You need to, if the people can't see you in those roles, then they're not going to be able to provide you a reference, or even give you even more challenging roles. And you don't build that skill set, you don't build that confidence, and it's so important. Do it afraid. You'll find that so much, there's so much more value that you can bring to the situation than you actually think, and you will learn things that will really refine you as a professional. That is one thing. I really keep talking about the coaching, because I
Yeah.
think coaching is really important, because it creates a safe space for people to talk about the problems they've experienced in the workplace, and to be able to get that accountability around mindsets, behaviors that they need to adopt to be more effective in that role. And I think women coaches, or coaches who have experience in women leadership,
Mm-hmm.
can really help, whether it's an executive role you're going for or in a non-executive role. I think it's so important. We've talked about mentors, we've talked about sponsors. I would also say it's really important to join, if you can join, if you're going for non-executive director roles, and join, we're both had some dealings with in touch networks, and there are quite a
Yeah.
few others like Nedworks. So if the beauty of joining such organizations is that they provide CV services, that
Yeah.
they can provide training, if you're new to things like governance, they can bring you up to speed with the
Mm-hmm.
environment, and so you can feel confident, more confident sitting as a non-executive director. I think CV is really important. And the reason
Right.
why I say that is because the competencies required for a non-executive director are different
Very
to an
different.
executive. And an
Mm-hmm.
executive, their CV is about, things they've done, their track record in delivering change and improving the performance of the organization. And so it's all about the leadership you demonstrate there. But while as a non-executive director isn't involved in the hands-on. So
No,
stuff like, being strategic, being analytical, lateral thinking, being able to marshal your thoughts and influence are
that's it.
things that are much more important. And so you need to have your CV written in a way that shows where you have done such, you've chaired certain committees,
Mm-hmm.
and or you've challenged a norm and were influential in that role. So you want your CV to really uncover things like that. The other thing,
Those kind of attributes, those strategic and
exactly,
negotiating, being able
negotiating.
to influence, those kind of attributes. That's what you're looking for a net role.
Definitely, definitely.
Mm,
So that's really important. And you mentioned about having the women's groups. I think just be part of meetups that will help you gain confidence in the area, whether it's
yeah,
women or not. Just attend, and maybe one day you'll find yourself being able to present in these meetups. So
absolutely.
challenge yourself, bring yourself, and coaches can help you. They can
Mm,
help you, prep you for an interview. They can help you run through a presentation, and and give you some tips. One of the things my coach did, which was really important, and I kind of do some of these things without thinking about it. Women sometimes don't hold space, or just the way they present themselves may sometimes they don't they see it as a masculine thing. But one of the things she taught me when presenting, and I do this thing now, take space, and I kind of enjoy being
right,
in my own power. While as when I
right.
was having the imposter
Syndrome.
syndrome, I didn't know what that felt like. I didn't know what
Mm,
it felt like to feel comfortable talking, saying your
mm,
own perspective,
yeah.
um, and saying it before
Owning
loads
that
of
space, feeling
owning that space.
comfortable in it.
Exactly,
Yes.
being comfortable,
Mm,
and it's. I'm not saying it will happen immediately,
no, it
but I'm just
won't.
saying having people on the journey, friends. Even my sister is a director in an organization. We mentor each other. I
That's
mean, just
fantastic.
just from little chats, conversations, we talk about work, and then so yeah, it's you have friends who maybe
Mm,
mentor yourselves,
mm-hmm.
build yourselves up, use your networks to
Absolutely.
build yourself up.
Absolutely. And I like how you said, you might be afraid, but go for it anyway.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you will never be ready.
Hmm.
You will never be ready. So you might have those butterflies, but do your best. I mean, you've had some tips here today. Get your CV ready. She's giving us some tips about what they are looking for those kind of roles. Get a coach. If you can't afford a coach, of course they don't come cheap. If you have a friend who is a nerd, ask them to coach you occasionally.
Hmm.
Own the space. Of course, like you said, we have competencies and skills that we bring that we can bring to the table that can serve us, and we should be comfortable with what we can possibly bring to the table in terms of value. And we don't have to be masculine. We
Hmm.
don't have to be. We just need to do our research. What is needed for these roles? Where am I? What are the gaps? And start looking to close that gaps. So I hope we have done justice to this conversation today. I can still see some. There you go. Great tips, Adi.
Thank you,
Ronke
Ronke.
is saying great tips there. Okay, thank you very much, Ronke. Now, I did promise I wouldn't keep you here too long, but somehow you have survived 45, 45 minutes. Please, link up with her on LinkedIn. As you can see, she's amazing. She's
Thank
amazing.
you.
She sits on three boards. There's just so much to learn from her, and she does put out a few, articles out here and there. She's a busy woman. She's also an enterprise coach. We actually, work for the same organization for over, I think, about 9 months.
Hmm.
Yeah, so she does a great work out there with leadership, and she's a great board director, as you can
Thank
tell
you.
from our conversation this evening. So I'm going to let you go, my darling Adi.
Thank you so
I'm going to
much.
let you go. I hope you feel much better. Thank you for going through this, even though you're not feeling great. Thank you so much.
It's a
And
pleasure.
next week, we're going to have Abiodun Oshoba. And
Oh,
oh, yes, we're having Abby. We're having Abby next weekend, and we're going to be talking about all things agile, from her journey, how she started agile, how she has, taken agile to Nigeria and doing
fabulous.
amazing things. We're going to be talking all about that next weekend. So once again, to you, my darling guest this evening, Adi, please go take care of yourself. And
Thank
to
you,
our
Mary.
audience, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Victoria. Thank you.
Thank you,
Definitely
Victoria.
connecting. Yes, please connect with her. So we'll see you again next week, same time, same place, everyone.
Thank
Take
you.
care and bye
Bye.
bye.